Sam Darnold had a rough playoff performance against the Rams. We'll tell you how much it might impact his dynasty value next.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Here are your hosts, Marcus Mosher and Kate Madjuk.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Kate Madjuk. You can follow her on Twitter at Kate Madjuk. On today's show, we are recapping the Vikings Rams wildcard game, and we're going to talk about some head coaching rumors, movement at the end of the show. But let's start with our guy, Sam Darnold, 25 of 40, 245 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, did have a lost fumble. 9 sacks for 82 yards in this game, which is not great, Kate. How much value do you think Sam Darnold potentially lost because of not only his poor playoff performance against the Rams, but also going back to week 18 against the Lions?
I think he lost a decent amount of value, both in terms of the contract that he could get and in terms of just his overall dynasty value, because let's not forget, recency bias is kind of everything here with dynasty fantasy football managers. And on the big stage, Sam Darnold crumbled not once, but twice. And it really did feel like this moment where Sam Darnold was, kind of turning back into a pumpkin. Yeah, the carriage turned back into a pumpkin, if you will.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just the fact that he was taking sacks left and right, because I do want to give the Rams defense credit. Their defensive line, their drafting has been unmatched. Their first round pick, second round pick, the way that they've gone about rebuilding this defense, I think, is truly something special. They've drafted super well. They've found a lot of talent, and I think a lot of value where it matters. So there's not a ton of household names on this Rams defense, but I do think, generally speaking, this is an underrated unit. Byron Young, Jared Verse, Braden Fisk.
Yeah.
There's a lot of very intriguing talent here. So let's give them their flowers. But I mean, Sam Darnold, even when it mattered, did not hit the throws that he needed to throw. That touchdown to TJ Hawkinson had zero business being a touchdown. That was all TJ Hawkinson. The throw was behind him. There were several times where the receivers just needed to make absolute asinine adjustments to those throws. That's, I think, what we're kind of going to remember from this end of the season, and it's not good.
So I just want to point out that Brendan Thorne from Trench Warfare, he put the Vikings offensive line against the Rams defensive line as the biggest mismatch of round 1 of the playoffs against any position. He thought going into the game that the Rams had a massive advantage, and I think you saw that play out, right? They were just eating all day long. Obviously, Sam Darnold's last 2 games have not been good. I'm not going to sit up here and tell you that it has been, because they haven't been. This was his first playoff start, and we quite often see quarterbacks struggle their first time playing on the road in a playoff game. Even some of the best quarterbacks like Lamar Jackson struggled in his first playoff start. The question is, how much will this impact his dynasty value? Because you and I were talking pre-show, I'm still in on Sam Darnold if he is the Vikings quarterback and he's throwing to Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson and TJ Hawkinson. But if the Vikings got spooked off enough here to say, hey, we're okay letting Sam Darnold hit free agency, we're going to start this rookie quarterback window with JJ McCarthy, and now Sam Darnold is with the Titans or with the Giants, name your team, I am going to get a little bit concerned.
Here's a stat that I want to bring. It's not one stat in particular, but here's some information that I want you to digest in terms of how bad Sam Darnold's last 2 starts were. One of the biggest things that you can look at, in terms of like a passer's true just baseline performance is how they're performing from a clean pocket. Obviously, when they're under pressure, that impacts decision making, that impacts just the spots on the field where you're able to access a throw. But when you're in a clean pocket, that's when you're able to make and evaluate a player's decision making. Over the last 2 games for Sam Darnold, he has averaged fewer yards per attempt in a clean pocket than he has under pressure. That's pretty darn bad.
Yeah.
45 PFF passing grade from a clean pocket over the past 2 weeks, 48.3 passer grade from a pressured pocket, which means PFF is grading him as a better passer under pressure than they are from a clean pocket. What it reminded me of in the past 2 weeks is the old seeing ghosts metaphor. It felt like even when Sam Darnold wasn't under pressure, it felt like he was kind of preparing for pressure and throwing like he was about to be under pressure, which I think forced a lot of inaccuracies. I think it just didn't feel like
It didn't feel like what we saw the rest of the season, but
no.
I don't think you luck into throwing for 4,300 yards and 35 touchdowns with being a bad player. Now, I think Darnold deserves a lot of the criticism that he's getting for the last 2 games, but I don't think Kevin O'Connell necessarily created a good game plan to get rid of the ball quick from Sam Darnold, so he's not having to stand in some of these pressure pockets. Again, I think from a dynasty perspective, a lot of this is going to depend on landing spot, and Minnesota is obviously the most attractive destination. I think we're going to value him depending on where he lands. And again, let me say this, Kate. If he signs a 2-year, $80 million deal with Minnesota, are you really going to be all that worried about the last 2 games of the season? Or are you going to look at what he did in the regular season and be like, okay, he's probably going to be able to repeat those numbers again for the next couple of years?
I definitely think the biggest thing is going to be whether or not he is with the Minnesota Vikings, to your point. It's just a matter of how much did this performance make the Vikings go, well, we got this close, but we weren't close at all. What does that mean for the future of the position? Like, what would JJ McCarthy give us? I don't think the season would have played out the same way with JJ McCarthy, just to be clear. I don't think JJ McCarthy would have been the answer here in the postseason. It's more or less, I think, when you're looking at how much this game changes the outlook, I think you just have to evaluate, like, what do you think that the Vikings will believe based on this specific circumstance? And I have to imagine it's at least giving them some pause. So on the flip side, what does that mean for JJ McCarthy? Do you think the Vikings move on from JJ McCarthy? What do we do from him from a dynasty perspective?
I think that Sam Darnold is back in 2025. I just see the way that the players loved him in the locker room. I think Kevin O'Connell will probably make some changes to the offense to make it a little bit even more Sam Darnold friendly. And again, this was his first year into the system. I've got to believe in year 2, he's going to make some big leaps. So McCarthy is probably back in a wait and see situation. Maybe we see him 2026, 2027, but I am still in the camp that I think Sam Darnold returns to Minnesota. What about you? What do you think happens?
I think, obviously, pending what they do with Sam Darnold, I wouldn't be surprised if they moved on from him this offseason, especially given the number of teams that are in dire straits when it
Do you
comes
think they could franchise tag him and then try to trade him? Because that's what I would do. I wouldn't let him walk out of the building for nothing.
And what would the franchise tag be worth? Probably around,
it's like $45 million for 1 year.
Yeah, I think that probably seems like the right move. I definitely agree. Like, probably shouldn't just let him move on.
I still believe that the Vikings are going to figure out a way to keep Sam Darnold, because you just don't let quarterbacks that have that type of regular season walk. I know it was a disappointing end of the year, and it was a rough couple games. Their offensive line really broke down. I would want to see another year of it. We'll see what the Vikings do. Let's go to the other side, Kate. The Rams offense was fine. Is that fair to say? It was fine against the Vikings. It didn't put up massive numbers, but I did want to talk about Cooper Kupp, who caught just one pass. Let's talk about his dynasty value next. This episode is brought to you by Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you were ever going to get any money back, and then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today, an expert who gives you your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return, while you get real-time updates on their progress so that you can focus on your day. An expert who will find you every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy, all so you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now this is Taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service. Real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Okay, let's talk about the Rams in this game. Matt Stafford, 19-27, 209 yards, 2 touchdowns. Puka Nacua, a relatively quiet game, 5 for 44. Tyler Higbee, 5 for 58. But I want to talk about Cooper Kupp. 1 for 29 in this game. Again, a must-win game, a playoff game. And he gets one target. We've seen him basically do nothing over the last few weeks. 1 for 29 against the Cardinals, 3 for 24 against the Jets, 3 targets, 0 catches, 0 yards against the 49ers. What's going on with Cooper Kupp?
I have to wonder if this is just kind of the end of his sort of tenure with the Rams. And I don't know if he's done, but this is a player that's had some injury concerns over the past couple of years. And let's face it, he's no longer a spring chicken. He is turning 32 years old this offseason. I have to wonder if we are witnessing the end of his standing in LA.
I think it's over. Truly, I think it's over. You watch him move compared to the way he used to be able to move, and it's just not the same. He gets banged up more frequently. He's just not a big part of the offense. There were some rumblings that the Rams could potentially trade him during the season. They happened to win a couple games right before the deadline, and they decided to hold on to him. And I understand the philosophy. Like, you're not going to go out and get a receiver mid-season that's probably going to help you more. But I think this offseason, Sean McVay is going to try to find ways to make this offense a little bit more dynamic and innovative. And I think they're going to attack receiver, whether it's in free agency or the draft. And with Cooper Kupp having a big cap number, to me, it feels like this is the end.
Here was the moment that I kind of looked at the circumstances and I'm like, this really feels like the end. There's a catch that Tyler Higbee made on the first drive. I thought it was Cooper Kupp for like a hot second. And I realized it wasn't. I realized it was 32-year-old Tyler Higbee who's made his return from a torn ACL. And I was like, oh, okay, not Cooper Kupp. Keep watching the game. And man, Tyler Higbee looked so much more explosive than Cooper Kupp. And that was the moment I said, it does not feel like this is Cooper Kupp's game anymore. When you have Demarcus Robinson, 2 targets, Davis Allen, 2 targets, Hunter Long, 2 targets, Colby Parkinson, 2 targets.
Yep.
You've got Cooper Kupp with just a single target. And the thing that I think is like most damning here is the fact that Sean McVay is a head coach that we know if he wants to get Cooper Kupp the ball, he will scheme ways to get the ball in Cooper Kupp's hands. He's not going to let it play out to, Matt Stafford reading the coverages, etc. he's going to generate touches for a player that he wants and trusts the ball to get into their hands, right? Whether it be on a screenplay, etc. He is a good offensive play caller, and he is a creative one. So he will make whatever he wants to happen. He didn't make anything happen with Cooper Kupp. He did not generate some more organic touches when he saw the game wasn't opening up. He just let bygones be bygones. And I think Cooper Kupp definitely is out of the game plan. So what does that mean for the Rams offense in general? We saw them spread the ball around a ton. Got the tight ends way more involved than we usually see. Obviously, Tyler Higbee forced from this game with a chest injury, ended up being ruled out. So, but he was a huge part of this game plan very early on. What do we think about a guy like Jordan Whittington, who we've kind of seen pop up at various moments when Cooper Kupp has not been in the game? Didn't have a single target in this game, but like moving forward, what do you think the answer is, not named Puka Nacua, for this Rams offense?
I don't think it's on the roster, to be honest with you. I think Jordan Whittington is just kind of a guy. I look at like the last 4 games that the Rams have played with Matt Stafford and with Cooper Kupp. They scored 27 points against the Vikings, but 7 of those came on a return, a fumble return for a touchdown. So 20 points by the offense, 13 against Arizona, 19 against the Jets, and 12 against the 49ers. Like, this offense, Kate, has just not been very good for the last month and a half, right? Now, they did have a monster game against the Bills in there, but 21 points against the Saints, 20 against the Eagles. They've really struggled in most of these games to score. I got a feeling that Sean McVay is going to look at their offense and be like, hey, Puka is great, but we can't win a Super Bowl with one receiver. You go back and you look at the year they did win the Super Bowl, they had Cooper Kupp. They had Odell Beckham, who played really well in the second half of the year. They had Robert Woods. They had a lot of different options in that passing attack. Tutu Atwell and Jordan Whittington, and these guys are they're just guys. They're not guys that make defenses worried. I think this is going to be a completely new offense in 2025. I wouldn't be surprised if they get multiple veteran receivers to make it a little bit more dynamic.
Yeah, and I think what they're probably missing at this point in a big way is depth. And like there's no sort of semblance of depth that you're going to be particularly concerned about if you're an opposing defensive coordinator. So I think that's something they need to seriously work on here in the season to come. The offseason should be a huge priority. There are some interesting, like, there aren't a ton of sexy names at the top of the free agent list, but I do think that there are a decent number of solid depth pieces, right? Like, I think you could do worse from a depth standpoint in this free agency.
Let me give you, like, I think if like Darius Slayton was the number 2 receiver with the Rams, I would love that so much more than what they currently have on their team.
Yeah, I think that's a great call. I think that there are some options out there that could make this, this lull not a lull for that much longer, but it definitely doesn't feel like Cooper Kupp is the answer here.
Would you be surprised if Cooper Kupp like retires after this year?
I kind of would, but like at the same time, it wouldn't.
We've had like multiple receivers from the 2017 and 2018 drafts already retire. And I don't think he's at the point of his career where he can't play anymore. I just think he's at the point where he no longer can be like a number 1 or number 2 option. There's going to be teams out there that are looking for a veteran to come in and be the 3rd receiver, the Keenan Allen role. So if he wants to play another 2 or 3 years, I think he can obviously do that. But I think the days of us caring about him as a dynasty asset are over.
Yeah, I think that's fair. RIP. It's never fun to have these
No,
chats.
it's not fun. It's not fun. But unfortunately, this is what happens. So if you've been holding on to him, hoping that a resurgence is going to happen, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but it's not happening. Okay, let's talk about some coaching news, because we got some big time coaching news over the weekend and on Monday. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Gametime. I love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, or comedy. One of my favorite memories was going to a couple of these Bills games at night when they played like the Sunday night game, the Monday night game. The energy and the excitement is unforgettable. I might see if I can go to this Bills Ravens game on Sunday night. It's going to be wild. Game Time Picks has made it even easier to get tickets for your favorite events with their new feature, Game Time Picks. The feature filters out the fluff to show you only the incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste your time searching through thousands of tickets. Listen, I love going on the app and using the panoramic view of the seats so you know exactly what your seats are going to look like before you buy. Plus, you can toggle the all-in pricing feature so you know exactly what you're going to pay at checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out the new Locked On NFL show. 2 shows every single day. One in the morning with Tyler Rowland, one in the afternoon with Tony Wiggins, available wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Kate, let's talk about some coaching news. Listen, let's do the Cowboy stuff first because it's kind of a Cowboy show. The Dallas Cowboys
I've got
decided
the leading industry expert right here.
Yeah, there you go. The Dallas Cowboys moved on from Mike McCarthy. If you want to know more about that, check out Locked On Cowboys. I hear they do a good job over there. What's interesting for this for me is that I think Mike McCarthy is one of the better candidates out there when it comes to producing fantasy relevant assets. We saw Dak Prescott finish first in touchdown passes in 2023. CeeDee Lamb has become a superstar. The running backs have always been productive. Is there a place out there that you would like to see Mike McCarthy land from a dynasty perspective?
I'm gonna pitch this actually back to you. I want to know where you think the best fit is, knowing Mike McCarthy as well as you do, because obviously I do think we want Mike McCarthy to go to a place with plenty of offensive
Bears.
weapons to work
Bear,
with, right?
Bears.
That's the starting point.
Yeah, Bears. And there's a couple different reasons. I think Mike McCarthy, when it comes to like winning Super Bowls, I don't know if he can do it anymore, but I do know that he can design and call an offense that's very quarterback friendly. He does a really good job of putting his best receiver in spots where they can get easy touches. We saw CeeDee Lamb work out of the slot a ton. We see Mike McCarthy put his quarterback in shotgun basically all the time and allow him to throw the ball 40, 45 times a game. I think Mike McCarthy with Caleb Williams could help develop him into a really, really effective quarterback. It's not the best hire from a franchise perspective if you're trying to win a Super Bowl, but if you just want to become a competent, respectable franchise, I think Mike McCarthy is a pretty good option for Chicago.
Mike McCarthy is intriguing. How about an option like the Jaguars? We've talked about Ben
Another
Johnson
good one.
potentially
Yep.
being a guy that could come in and kind of take the weapons that they already have within that offense and mold them into something that's just a little bit more respectable, a little bit more productive. I do think that's a situation where day one he could probably come in and, you know how we thought Doug Peterson was going to be the answer? We thought like day one he's going to walk in and immediately be able to do more than Urban Meyer did. Like, I feel like that's the feeling. Mike McCarthy might be the answer that I thought Doug Peterson could be. I just think they have a lot of talent there in that offense. You look at the quarterback, obviously some ups and downs there, but hasn't been, I think, the most quarterback friendly situation. Trevor Lawrence also struggled with health. But they've got a ton of weapons on offense. You look at, star wide receiver Brian Thomas Jr., who made mountains out of molehills when it comes to like what he was working with at the quarterback position. Super productive, even with a guy like Mac Jones under center. Like, I'd love to see McCarthy in, this Jaguars offense just to see, because I think that's probably going to be like where we finally get our first true glimpse of what the offense is capable of.
Mike McCarthy is a floor raiser. And I think for quarterbacks like Caleb Williams and Trevor Lawrence, having somebody that can raise your floor and make you a more consistent game in and game out quarterback is what we want to see. Now, I think a lot of the ceiling is going to be dependent on the weapons and the offensive line around them. But I think Mike McCarthy has done a pretty good job of developing offensive lines, whether it was in his Green Bay career or Dallas career. Again, he is not the sexiest option out there. I totally understand. But from a fantasy and a dynasty perspective, we want him to land with a good quarterback. And frankly, I think he will. I think McCarthy's got some leverage here. And I think he's got enough skins on the wall that he's going to land one of these jobs. And I think we're going to see a massive improvement wherever he goes on offense.
Yeah, I think that's for sure. Let's talk about another head coach who did actually make this official. Let's say Mike Vrabel. He is in as the head coach of the New England Patriots, a team that we've kind of said, okay, maybe I want some pieces of, given the fact that they finally found a guy we think could be the quarterback.
Yeah.
But I got some rough news for you, buddy. In 6 years as Tennessee's head coach, we did not see much in terms of passing production. 31st, 30th in the league in pass attempts, 25th, 30th. That's not ideal.
No, this is the opposite of Mike McCarthy for me, where I think Mike Vrabel is a better pure football coach than what McCarthy is. But I don't think he's necessarily the type of coach that's going to make your offense better, right? In fact, I think his style of football actually is going to limit the way that these quarterbacks are going to play. So I think what you saw from like Justin Herbert, maybe in the first half of the season, where limited pass attempts, we're going to keep the number of possessions down. We're going to play good defense, is probably what you're going to be hoping for with Drake May. I was hoping that the Patriots would go out and get some offensive-minded head coach to unlock and unleash Drake May, like a Ben Johnson or a Liam Cohen or a Joe Brady. That's not the case. So I think all these guys on offense that maybe we are somewhat excited about, like Jalen Polk, Javon Baker, Pop Douglas, none of them excite me with this hiring right now.
I think that's fair. I think one thing maybe we can be excited about, though, is the run game.
Yeah.
This is an organization. I don't know that they're going to stick with Ramondre Stevenson. They did just, pay him pretty handsomely, but this is going to be a offense that I think wants to run the football and take the air out of the football in general. Not good news for Drake May. Probably, like, I think Mike Vrabel, a solid coaching hire from a perspective that, like,
I think he's going to make the
May,
Patriots relevant again.
Yes. Like, I think could be something relevant, but I don't know, man. I don't know.
I don't love it. I don't love it from a fantasy perspective. Again, I think this makes the Patriots a much better team and franchise. But if you were hoping that Drake May was going to become the next Josh Allen or name your top 7, top 8 fantasy quarterback, I just don't see it. Now, I will say one thing before we move on. We've seen in the past that Mike Vrabel has done a good job of hiring offensive-minded or offensive coordinators, whether it was Matt LaFleur, who eventually went on to take the Packers job, or Arthur Smith was the OC when they went to the AFC Championship game. Maybe he's able to find that guy to make this offense uber efficient. So I'm not completely ruling it out, but I do want to see who he hires over the next couple of weeks. If it's Josh McDaniels, okay, I'm just not going to be all that excited.
Yeah, I don't want to see the New England band get back together
No.
like that. But
No.
I mean, yeah, I think the one takeaway, though, is just that I think Mike Vrabel, a pretty good head coach in general,
Yes.
based on what we've seen. So that's a plus. We'll see how the rest shakes out, but still plenty of other coaching moves left to be, seen in terms of the dominoes falling out here. We've got a lot to watch here in the coming weeks.
All right, that is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty Football your first listen every single day. Go download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. Follow Kate on Twitter at Kate Majuk. I'm at Marcus_Mosher, and we will see you right back here tomorrow with Matt Williamson answering your Twitter questions.